Hello everyone, welcome back to I guess what we should be maybe saying part 2 of Got Somme, as we talk about Bass Phillip, the winery. If you want to learn about the history, the incredible history of the winery, how it came to be and how it came to end, or at least the journey of Phillip Jones, please go back to the last episode. But this is the greatest part of our experience, and hopefully we can pass on the passion of what we're tasting and smelling onto you, so you can therefore decide whether you want to go and enjoy your own bottle of Bass Phillip wine. But Phillip Jones is sitting next to us. What is it, the chief winemaker or just winemaker of Bass Phillip? Did you give yourself a title? What was the title?
Well, I used to call myself a wine grower.
The wine grower.
Yeah. Now this, if you like, that's a translation of the viticulteur term
right.
in France.
Yep.
Where you know, these small producers, small family businesses, they did it all themselves. But it's the same sort of concept I was talking about in the previous episode, that the vineyard and the way it's been treated and so on dominates the result.
Yeah.
And so that I'm the grower, basically.
You're a grower. That's great. We're trying in front of us, you've brought in a bottle, and this is like not just our bottle, this is the bottle, 2010 premium bottle of Bass Phillip Pinot Noir, of course. This is the upper echelon, this is the piece de la resistance of what you were creating. Is there a reason why you brought, before we talk about your premium variety, is there a reason why you brought in this vintage, 2010?
Yes. I thought, you know, given it's a measure of my respect for Carlos, absolutely.
It's an honour.
And also you.
Thank you.
Well, I've met you before.
Yep, that's great. A newfound respect.
Its brother, so its big brother, which is tiny production. It'd be it'd be 10 or 15% of the level of production of that wine, which isn't much anyway.
Yeah.
The reserve wine that was selected by Mr. James Halliday as Australian Wine of the Year in that vintage. So that's
special.
That's the first time that a Pinot Noir has been given that special assignation. Right. So that's the origin, but it's a damn good vintage.
Yeah.
And it's all of the wines from that vintage, but certainly the premium, which is just this much down.
What's funny is that the first couple of weeks I arrived in Australia, and I just only read about Bass Phillip. I did not have them at the restaurant in London, but when I do arrive, they had sommelier previously before me 8 years ago, gave me a blind tasting of the wine. And, you're doing service, you're not paying too much attention, but I clearly putting the nose 3 or 4 times. I'm like, oh my God, this is good Burgundy. This is very, very good Burgundy. And I did go for Premier Cru then. And he was like, no, this is Australian, this is Bass Phillip. And it's funny because he was a premium 2010.
Yeah.
So I clearly remember that. So this is bringing me, that's special.
So just to mansplain a little bit, you're saying the premium is your best. Is that correct?
Second best.
So premium's the second best. So it's Big Brother. Oh, now it makes sense. What's the name of that one again? The upper
Reserve.
The Reserve. That was voted the wine of the year.
Yeah.
And then we were even talking about earlier, Langdons still have in like the outstanding.
No, exceptional.
Exceptional class.
The only exceptional is only
is
one.
the Pinot Noir is still Bass Phillip Pinot Noir.
Well, yeah.
Still,
I mean, it you cannot be. Well, these were the old rules. You cannot be listed in that top 100, 120 or whatever it is, unless, according to their formula, which isn't published, the wine, a particular wine that's on that list, must have achieved that level or status for 10 years before they'll put it on the list. So
it's not just that year.
The first year that we put that on the market was 1991, and it appeared in that top of the Langtons list in the year 2000. And so it's been in that top category since.
For 23 years.
And this wine, which is its little brother, is in the next category down.
Yeah.
So what is that called?
Outstanding.
Outstanding, yeah. And that's never changed.
That's an honour,
So that was great. That was great because we didn't we didn't submit the wines for competition show judgings and so on.
Yeah, you don't need much effort to sell your wines, no?
Well,
So that's why we're so
yeah.
privileged, I think, and I feel very, very honored to have you here.
When I started with small batches of Pinot Noir, because there was only a tiny part of the vineyard when I first planted there. It was
2 rows,
3 rows, yeah. And they weren't full, they were 100-metre rows, so there wasn't much. And after my restaurateur friend had said, Frenchman had said to you get rid of everything else and you stick to Pinot. And I thought, okay, so I'll do it gradually, because in those days I was working in management consulting after working in engineering research, and I had basically 1 day a week available to work in the vineyard. Anyway, I changed the vineyard by pulling vines out and replanting new vines, not by... What's the word? I can't remember.
And did you go straight away for close planting at that time when you replanted the Bordeaux varietals?
Originally, yeah.
That's straight from.
So
the
I
beginning
originally
already.
planted it at
8,000.
8,500 vines per hectare. Yeah. And I did further experiments later at much denser planting. But let's not spend time on that now. Excuse me. The brain's gone. Oh, and I noticed, because I ploughed all the ground up and dug holes and did everything, took samples, analysed the soils to death, blah, blah, blah. I had 5 different soil types on this 10-acre property.
Wow, there you go.
And I thought, well, I didn't know what the major influence that generates this terroir, this flavour of the place or of the site. So I made different batches. In the first few years when I made the wines, I made small batches, wouldn't have been more than, 20 to 50 litres each batch from different parts of the vineyard.
Exploring.
To find out what they'd end up tasting like. Now, it's pretty hard to make small batches of wine without spoiling them, because there's, the amount of oxygen per litre of finished wine that you end up is very high. And you get oxidation and VA and blah, blah, blah. So I tried all that several times over. The other parameter, the other variable, so this was a very mathematical thing, was the clone of Pinot Noir. Now, clonal selection, the study of clones and the publishing of data about it is just a massively confusing subject that's very hard to fight your way through. And I was accustomed in my other work to going through research papers and investigating whatever was available anywhere in the world. And clonal selection was a headache.
Yeah.
And so that was another parameter. So there were about 40 different
Clones.
possible combinations of different soil
Soils,
and different clones. And that was simplifying it. Yeah. And so when the time came in 1989, when I'd already converted a significant part of the vineyard across, although they were very young vines, and that's another factor, age of vines, that, if the vines are less than 10 years old, don't bet on getting a result that will be the regular result for the next 50 years. So to the mathematical engineer, a really juicy problem. The study never stopped.
A lot to explore.
Yeah. So
A lot to.
in that year, I thought, well, given that those 5 samples I did in the last 4 years were just a little bit different that way, and then so I had 3 old milk vats that I used as fermenters, and they're great. Stainless steel, they're insulated, and so on and so on. And and so I produced 3 wines from the same property, and they were so different.
Oh, wow.
And
Just from the
that's where it
soils
started.
and-
So
yeah.
it was just it was a practical exercise of making batches. And then I noticed all sorts of
Identify.
unusual properties in the one that produced the best wine. And one of them, which is I always get into trouble about, and I used to make jokes about it sometimes, was that, you see, when all fruit trees, the shoots as they grow in spring, they all grow up to the sun. They all grow basically vertically, and then the flowers form at particular nodes, and off we go. And so here's my cane or my major shoot, and there's a flower. And they start off a flower cluster before they actually flower, an inflorescence. And they're all facing upwards. And later, and they self-fertilise in grapevines, and then as the individual flowers become individual berries on a bunch, usually the bunch gets so heavy it rolls down like that. Now, in the perfect world, when there's a lot of energy, and energy is one of them, I didn't talk about it before, one of the most important factors in this whole process, because you end up, nature delivers fruit full of energy, and all you do in the process of smashing it, crushing it, fermenting it, doing things to it, pushing it through hoses with pumps, all this stuff, reduces the energy state. And wines that are over-processed or over-handled are tired. Now, if you get back to the grapevine, the bunches that are really strong, and I'll simplify by saying full of energy, they don't curl over and die and hang. They stay upright. So I refer to this phenomenon as bunches erectus. and there's only one other person in the world who's ever written about it, and he was a guy from Barolo with Nebbiolo, and Nebbiolo is big bunches.
Yeah.
And if you look it up these days, I think there are more people make reference to it. But basically, the best wine comes from a vineyard within a vineyard region, from a vineyard that maintains erect bunches. Work that out.
There you go.
And that became part of the formula. We had a year in 2007 where all the vineyards, because at that time we had 4 different vineyards, all of the vineyards had a significant level of erect bunches, and the wines even today, they are so beautiful. They're perfumed and rich and full of flavour. Another day, we'll open one. They're just... And that was a Bunches erectus year.
Right.
So that was one of the factors that differentiated the reserve ahead of the others. And the reserve wine, it's a shame we can't drink one now, but you've got to sit down for hours and it's got to breathe and all that stuff. But that sings to you. And after you've swallowed it, it's still talking. And you salivate. And the saliva keeps pumping out of your tongue. And this sounds like exaggeration,
but it is true.
It's true. It's crazy, and that's this tiny part of that vineyard.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the one that's in front of us, a premium. Still very high acid.
Yes.
The balance is just perfect.
Yeah.
I know that you're trying to. It's not like minimal impact on the wines. You have your own process with it, but. What is your secret sauce, now that you can reveal because you've sold
I'm happy to talk about anything.
Yeah, you sold Bass Phillip. You can give us your secret sauce. How are you getting such a well-balanced, refined, high-end quality wine that doesn't go beyond the age of the grapes? Is there some sort of process that you hang your hat on that you were... I mean, because the fact that you said the lack of irrigation is interesting, but that's down to Gippsland and where you were... Because a lot of people have to.
Well, no, that applies to everything. You see, as soon as you irrigate anything, you tamper with the natural process. Right. And I won't bore you with, I could spend 5 minutes describing to you what happens to plants when they wilt on a 40-degree day. And the fact that people rush out and try to spray water all over them and put tons of water in the ground to try and save them. The plants don't care. They go into a state of total inactivity. And when they arise, they come up from the dead the next day if there's moisture in the air. So this is all about energy.
Would that influence the soil? I mean, obviously the soil, the close planting, that will... I mean, if the soil is fertile, You said fertile in the beginning,
Yeah.
so you would have to have the vines very, very close. So it definitely gets that all heavy concentration. Yeah, to have the vines fighting for something.
One of the great attributes of some of the greatest wines made from Pinot Noir and Nebbiolo is summed up by the word minerality. There's a tanginess that hangs around in the back of your palate and keeps talking to you after you've swallowed, and makes you salivate. And it's quite crazy the way this happens. Now, more of the complex minerals in the soil profile appear deeper down. So the closer you plant the vines together, the more they have to fight to go down to get water down low, particularly if you don't irrigate. See, the problem with irrigation is that it ensures that the root zone is clustered right near the dripper lines, outlets, or near the drippers in that plastic hose that goes along the thing. And so you get a cluster of roots in a kind of bag down here and almost nothing below it.
So they're missing a lot of nutrients around that.
Yeah, they don't get to the juicy bits. They don't get to the high mineral soil content and draw it up.
So layman's terms as well, it's like they don't have to necessarily fight with the brother and sister, which kind of provides the strength of quality of wine, because they've gone, okay, well I'm going to go deeper. Oh, I'm going to come deeper with you. Well, I'm going to go deeper again, and that's where we're really finding some high quality nutrients. And
that's right.
Oh, I've never thought of it. That's interesting.
That's
Whereas
right.
if you just give them irrigation, they're just like, we're happy here.
Well, they may
This
as
level
well
of
be
soil.
hydroponic.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have known that. That's interesting.
And it's fascinating because we make a mess of agriculture. You know, if you're talking about value-added products in agriculture, you have to ensure that you're delivering special attributes of nature, not just the first order flavour components or properties of the produce itself. So that's where that thought process comes from. But I believe it's got a lot to do with the energy inherent in the plant. And so if you have low crop, you focus more of that plant's energy into each bunch. And then if you process it without, you see, oxygen exposure of fruit, and particularly the juice, during the crushing and the fermentation exercise is a really critical factor. The important thing is that the oxygen is needed, for example, in the fermentation to get the yeasts working hard, and that produces a temperature that's satisfactory for getting all the best extraction out of the fruit. I mean, there's a grape berry. Now, most of the flavour is in the 10% close to the skin, and so if you try to preserve that without exposing it to oxygen too much, you end up with really fantastically flavoured result. So that's why often in production of red wines, the crushing process, the technology used, minimises the damage to the actual structure of a berry. You may not want to have the stems of a bunch of grapes in the fermentation because that imparts a different flavour, sometimes not desirably. But if you have a fair number of whole berries in the ferment, you retain a lot of the flavour power that's sitting inside there. So some of these factors, and we used to sieve. We did it by hand for about 10 years. Oh, wow. I got a little guy in the local engineering works in Preston, Giovanni, fantastic man. He made these big tabletops with holes this big, cut out of stainless steel, and we'd all stand around. It was great fun because there were people that come with their kids, and they'd all be throwing berries at each other and so on, and rubbing this stuff through the sieve, and we had this long rake with a bit of wood nailed to it to drag it out of the bottom of this milk vat that we put them on. So it was all, and that was based on, I did that to ensure that the integrity of the whole berries was retained for a percentage of the berries, and that, I think that helped to put the wines, kind of think of it, I never thought, that helped to put the early wines on the map.
So, okay, of course, that's so important. But then, for example, the wines, the Bass Phillip wines, which, you know, always seem so concentrated, obviously, well, starting from the roots, of course, but then is there like a bigger extraction or something in the winery after the wines are fermented, or during, or at what stage do they get this huge concentration and wines that live for so long?
The best extraction of flavours out of the fruit. So, you know, we did all this work and we've got energetic fruit. Let's not throw it out when we press the skins. Right?
Exactly.
So that's the big issue. And basically, the best extraction occurs when the fermentation temperature reaches its peak. And so, with Pinot Noir, it's kind of well known amongst the old, you know, viticulteur of France. You must ferment it higher than 30 degrees, and don't ferment it higher than 35 because you start to damage some of the microbes that facilitate the things you want. We probably only have a period of 3 to 6 days when that occurs early in the fermentation. And it's just a natural process because and it's all, the naturalness of it depends on the size of the fermentation vessel, how well insulated the walls are, and so on and so on. And when I was able to afford it, we bought a couple of fermenting tanks made from oak. So they were imported from France, beautifully made. I think it cost a fortune, tens of thousands of dollars. And you get a slightly better result from them. There's a better, because they extract a bit of the soft tannin, the phenolic character out of the oak and so on.
And would you say it's very important to obviously oxygenate the wines, allow for them to gain that resilience?
Yeah. So I'm not...
And that's one thing, probably a huge feature from Bass Phillip wines, to gain that resilience for the long run.
Well, the only problem it introduces, oxygenating the wines during their lifetime, particularly before bottling, is that when you pull the cork on one, you really have to sit and wait for 2 hours before it comes into equilibrium with the atmosphere, because it's already conditioned to oxygen. And so there's a bit more conditioning to occur. That's not really a scientific explanation, but it's what happens. And this is an issue in restaurants, of course.
True, yeah.
And I can't do much about that.
Talking about your different styles of wine, of course, we've got the premium here. It's fantastic. I mean, there's just so much beautiful red fruit. It's stunning. And it's but when for you was the decision, knowing that you planted first, you know, your older vines, the reserve vines, then you planted, you know, wines that will be mixed with premium, getting down to something like a Crown Prince, which is a more approachable wine at a price point for a lot of people. Do you feel that you have to not cheapen your brand at all, but do you feel like you have to make some sort of sacrifice in quality to be able to produce the quantity to make the Bass Phillip name available on most dinner tables?
I understand the question. No, that was never an influence. You know, if for example, we were able to produce 90% of the wines in the last few years at the reserve level, I would have rocked up in my Rolls Royce this afternoon and offered to take him out for a cup of coffee.
Happy days. You would have sold Bass Phillip earlier already?
Probably.
Yeah.
So no, it was what it was.
Yeah.
And today there's a new management in charge, and so today it is what it is, not necessarily what it was. So I understand that the new management have deleted a couple of the labels and juggled around the composition a bit. None of my business, but that's just a.
So you'll see more.
observation.
Do you think we'll see in the future from now on more quantity of Bass Phillip available?
No, I'm not in a position to say.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
They also bought a not really well known vineyard near on the eastern side of Currumborough, which used to be called Claire de Lune. I used to call him clearly a loony, but he was a good mate of mine.
Claire de Lune sounds like an oyster
So
name.
it's
So they
a
bought
different. It's totally different wine. Now I don't know
Okay.
what their program is
It
for
is,
that,
yeah.
but that's the truth.
Gotcha.
It
So
is.
there
It
is
is different already,
potentially a new vineyard that could be, and you don't have to say a word, mixed with some of the entry level Bass Phillip potentially in the future. Interesting. But that's not your problem anymore.
No comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did have one more question. I think
Please.
about the closures, because that's another big subject. Different corks, diams now, and natural cork. What's your and I hope you. I'm not sure if you enjoy talking about this topic or not, but the fact is, when you find a cork bottle, is very, very annoying.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't find many Bass Phillip. I opened so many over the years.
Yep.
And rarely you see a bottle. So that's great. What's your take on?
Well, if you don't mind, pull the
Please.
cork out of one of those.
Yeah.
that one will
Also,
do.
just the fact
Just
that
take
this
it
is
out.
22 years
Yep.
and there's such minimal impact on that cork.
Now you'll see that there's a shiny, almost
Yeah.
plastic-looking end on both ends because the cork goes in
Yeah.
either that way. Or you don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
No.
I didn't know that.
Get on with it.
No, this is the one. This is the part that was.
No. I didn't know that when you stuff it in, there's not a designated end to go in.
Certainly not.
Okay, so I know what
all
end
you have to
it's
do is watch a corking machine operate for about
Right.
10 nanoseconds.
I get you. Right.
So,
Unless you have to line them up properly.
Gotcha.
So this is called Pro Cork, PRO. It was first developed in the early 2000s, and I'll go through the detail of this because it's worth knowing. It was developed by an engineer who was studying for his PhD at Melbourne University in chemical engineering, named Gregor Christie. He was studying these membranes, and that's that little bit of plasticky looking thing on each end of the cork, which were their permeability, so the passage of material through it. So in this case, wine is a function of or determined by the molecular weight of the substance trying to move through the membrane.
Wow.
Now, the issue with cork, which is hardly ever talked about, not at all, I've never heard of it. I went to a conference in the 1990s or 1980s, I don't know, run by the Wine Research Institute, which is in Adelaide. And there was this little guy with a white lab coat, and he was as proud as punch because he was asked to speak at this conference where PhDs and professors and everyone else were speaking. And he explained that the mould, trichloroanisole or TCA, the cork mould that people had become very frustrated with even by then, was a member of the soil-borne mould family. And so when you cut the bark on these oak trees in Portugal, and they take a strip, might be 2 to 3 metres high and 120 degrees, and throw them on a truck, the bottom 1 metre or so has always got soil in it, because every time it rains in the forest, just like if you park your car on a dirt road, the mud splashes up about 1 metre. And so long, for decades, the information about which part of that slab of cork came from near the road or near the ground, the information is lost. It all goes into a sort of steaming process and so on. But that doesn't remove the taint. And so a percentage of the corks that are printed, and they just punch them laterally out of the cork, is going to have this mould in it. So the Gregor's objective was to develop a product which, number one, they try to use the best quality, and that's only visual inspection, because you can't non-destructively test a cork. You can only do a sampling, do 1 million corks and find out the percentage that are bad. The objective was to have something to seal the cork, which still allowed the passage of oxygen, carbon dioxide, wine, etc., but not this high molecular weight cork mould taint thing. And that was it. Now, I've had sommeliers ring me and they've pulled the cork on a bottle that's got one of these pro corks in, and immediately, they're standing in front of the customer and say, "Oh, damn, it's corked," because they could smell the cork. But the wine, was perfect.
Yeah. Right.
Gotcha.
And so this is the best solution of all, because screw cap has problems.
Yeah.
And they're not fully tried out. DM, the composite cork, has problems because the glue that holds these, that's recycled.
Right? They're like agglomerated.
Yeah, and that can affect the end result. So, but that's a bit of background. That's reality. That's
a great
huge.
insight
Yeah,
into
that's
the
amazing,
Bass
yeah.
Phillip cork. I mean,
Definitely.
gosh, but it is funny because there's. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get a close up later, but there is that
Slight-
plastic feeling rim, but also like the wine is perfectly preserved. It's gorgeous. It's showing everything that you want. It's still got tertiary on it. It's showing 10 years. It's still got fruit.
It's having chocolate, coffee, almost
Yeah,
like coffee.
yeah, yeah.
Coffee now.
Stunning.
yeah.
So we're going to wrap up this episode. We wanted to focus on the 2010 premium that you put in front of us. We do know a little bit of the history of the Issan, which is, if you go back to the last episode, I'm going to just call it the fire field, from the hay bale story, which is awesome. Why did you want to bring in this bottle in particular to showcase, of all the range of Bass Phillip? Why is it is it this vintage of 2015?
The Issan one. Well, it's utterly different in style. You see, the top three, what are we? The top three wines that we've known since 1991, when we first released wine, they're distinctive. They all have a little bit of that character, more or less of that kind of aroma and so on. People, wine collectors, often see them, even if I'm in the restaurant at the next table or something, they say, "Oh, that's Bass Phillip," if they're having a mask tasting or whatever.
Of course.
And that gives me a thrill, But this one is very different. It's a different place. It's 15 kilometres away, different soil structure, and a different power balance in the back palate too. It doesn't have the back palate power. When we're evaluating wines or barrels or whatever, we always have a column which I label BPP, the back palate power, and that's the big deal that's missing in a lot of Australian wines, and that comes from the minerals and so on, all this stuff I was talking about before. This one doesn't carry as much of that, but it has more fruit, more furry tannin than the others have. So there's a different balance in it, and this Issan vineyard produces dark, quite intense fruits. So that's the reason. It's quite a comparison.
It is great comparison. Two completely different wines. A couple of quick questions before we wrap up. One is, there's one bottle of Bass Phillip that you can pick. Which one? What's the one that you're hanging your hat on?
which vintage of which.
I mean, I presume it's
level.
going to be reserve, right?
Yeah.
But what's a vintage? Well, Carlos is calling 98.
I think
Oh, look, it's so hard. 97, 98, 2010.
2010 can say not the reserve, but the premium's
The
bloody
premium, but there are a couple of premiums that I put up there. 2009, for example. 91 premium.
good. Well, hang on, that's the one then.
91.
Yeah, we put
The
it
first
next to.
one.
We put it next to. Well, 89 was the first one where we had separated the three category, but I didn't sell it until 91. 91 vintage, I put it in a good friend's 60th birthday party not long ago with one of my all-time favourite wines, 96 DRC Richebourg,
Was showing.
out of the same room.
So you felt like it held its own by.
Oh,
yeah.
and some people liked it more, and these are mad.
But that's the thing.
These are men who spend $100,000 a year on wine.
Yeah.
That's different. Yeah, that's a different league.
Those wines in the 90s, they were the first cabs off the rank. You know, I didn't. You know,
You didn't even know how fantastic they were.
Well, I still say I don't fully understand what I'm doing, but then I didn't have a clue.
Phillip Jones, thank you so much for coming to this podcast. To start to reach out to people who are winemakers and wineries in our first season of opening up the conversation past Carlos and myself, and to have you in this room is honestly an honour. So thank you very much for coming and not only bringing your own wines from your own collection, but sharing those stories. And I'm going to go out now before this episode's released and see if I can't find myself a 1991 bottle of Reserve. Good luck.
We should all drink one together one day.
Oh, please.
That would be.
Maybe
that
we
would
should.
Be, that would be amazing.
We should have a Got Some Christmas party and bring all of our guests back together. Do a long table.
That'd be good, yeah.
That'd be nice. We could do that. Thank you very much.
Right, my pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And
Thank
I'm
you
honoured.
very much.
Thanks.